Hi, you guys. Welcome back. My name is Carrie Penny. I am the Happy Crafty Homemaker, and today we are coming back to our Knowing Your Fibers series, and we are going to be talking about Corriedale and Cormo yarns. So this was not the original video I had planned on filming this weekend. However, here we are. I know I have some 100% Corriedale yarn somewhere in my stash, and I can't find it. I do have some fleece that is blends of both Corriedale and Cormo yarns. However, they are not marked. So we don't have any in-person samples to share this time, unfortunately, but I am very excited to be talking about these fibers as they are in their own rights, very unique and interesting fibers. So first off, let's talk about the Corriedale fiber. So Corriedale has a 3 to 5 inch staple length. If you did not check out my video on Merino and BFL, go check that video out. We talk about the vocabulary to kind of know as we're discussing these wool fibers. Staple length being the length of the fiber, micron count being the fineness of the hair. So the micron count for the Corriedale is 25 to 30. So we are talking about something that's a little bit, I don't want to say coarse because once again, coarse has a bad connotation, a little bit more rustic compared to the Merino and the BFL. So we're kind of moving up our rustic scale with this one, but still we're in the most people can tolerate this up against their bare skin. It's not a super rustic, very itchy fiber. It does naturally have a lot more lanolin on it. So if you do have any type of irritation from natural oils, make sure you have a fiber that has been completely processed down. A lot of spinners I was reading really like to have that extra lanolin on it because it gives them a slightly finer spin on the Corriedale fiber. But when they process the yarn, there's a process it goes through to kind of strip out the last of that lanolin. So if you have an issue with lanolin or you are super sensitive to wool, this is not something you're going to want close to your skin. However, this is not like an itchy, coarse fiber. Trust me, I've worked with wools and I have owned wools and wool sweaters that are what people think wool actually is like. This is finer than those. So Corriedale is a sheep mix of a merino and a British long wool. So I saw a couple of different places where the different British long wools were mentioned. Some say the Lincoln long wool, some say Rambouillet, and there was another one that was thrown in there. But it seems to be that as the breeding process was happening, either they don't know exactly what the long wool was, or it was a long wool blend. So the long and short of what happened. So James Little was working for this dude, and I can't remember his name. We're going to do this down and dirty. He basically told the guy from England, your sheep are not doing well here in New Zealand. So we need to do something. And he ended up breeding them with the merino sheep and ended up creating Corriedale fiber. So it was bred originally in New Zealand in the 1860s. By the 1900s, Corriedale as a breed was in the appendix for the sheep breeders, book of the breeds. But it took till 1916 to be an official breed listed in the book itself, as there were a number of other breeders who had been breeding long wool, British long wool sheep with merino. Corriedale wasn't fully codified as its own breed with its own name until 1916, but it was identified as a British long wool merino hybrid in the appendices by 1800 or 1900. It was imported into the US in 1914, and now they are heavily raised in Australia, New Zealand, and the Falkland Islands, as well as domestic for me. So yeah, this is one of those practicality outweighs purity for sheep breeds. Different climates do different things. Also, what a sheep eats, their diet can definitely change the output of the wool production. So I 100% understand taking a British sheep and trying to move it to New Zealand. That's going to have some environmental shock there. But in order to raise sheep in New Zealand, they bred these sheep with Merino, and now we have Corriedale. So Corriedale has a very defined crimp to the fleece, and I'll put a picture in up here. It is harder to spin by hand. So most of the yarns you're going to spin with the Corriedale are going to be DK to Aran weight yarns, but this is an incredibly springy fiber. So even in the finished wool, the finished yarn that you make with it, whether you spin it or whether you purchase something that has been spun by a machine, the final yarn fiber is going to have a ton of spring in it. It is a very elastic fiber. Excuse me. It does not have the same drape as something like a Merino because it's not as fine as a Merino, but it does have some drape, but it has that beautiful springiness, which makes it great for outerwear items, sweaters, stuff like that. As I said, the micron count is a little bit higher, so we are talking about something that is slightly coarser to the skin. So if you are particularly sensitive to the texture of wool up against your bare skin, this might not be where you want to go. If you have a fairly decent, just like normal tolerance to texture on your skin, this will be perfectly fine up against your bare skin. Corriedale does also breathe like Merino. However, it does tend to trap a little bit more heat in between the layers of the clothing and the skin. So it doesn't breathe quite as freely as a Merino does. Bouncy. The finished yarn is excellent for color work. It has a very high stitch definition in the yarn. Once it is spun, you don't have like quite the haloing that you have with like Merino. Felt very, very well. So I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent here. In researching as much as I can about these breeds, Corriedale has been the first one where, wholly unrelated to fabric production, spinning, weaving, any of that stuff, people are talking about Corriedale items. So I found a couple of Reddit threads where people were talking about Corriedale wool balls being the best wool balls. I found a couple of different people talking about their Corriedale wool rugs. Some of them were handmade. Some of them were bought that had been mechanically produced. And it was so funny because in none of the other research I've done for any of these breeds that we've already talked about or that we're going to be talking about in the next couple weeks, none have had that much of a layperson, for our purposes, interest in a breed of wool. And I thought that was really interesting. So it felt really well. The people who produce the rovings, the mills who produce the rovings, dyers who have worked with the rovings, all of them say if you're going to not spin your Corriedale imminently, to put it in a paper bag so that it can breathe and not get jostled so it doesn't felt it onto itself or onto other wool in your stash. So this is very, very ready to be felted almost instantly. One of the ladies was really funny on Reddit. She was talking about having wool balls, and she's been using wool balls in her dryer since 1980 whatever, and she's raised 900 children through her house, and her husband's hard on everything and everything's destroyed. She's just over the top of what she has put her Corriedale wool balls through. But she said she used to have to replace her laundry balls, wool dryer balls, every couple of years. Since she got the Corriedale ones, she's had, over the course of 15 years, a couple have just gotten a little bit smaller. But other than that, they're still doing great. Like, they're not vanishing. And as somebody who has had my wool balls that I've made through wool scraps just kind of shrink into nothingness. I understand what she's talking about, but I thought it was so funny as somebody who is not invested in the fiber community, fiber making, fiber manufacturing, sewing, anything else, her noticing what a difference this breed made in something like wool balls was interesting. A couple of other people were talking about their rugs, and one of them even showed a picture of a hand punch wool rug that somebody had made for them, and it's really, really pretty. So the floral pattern over the time of wear has felted across the top, so it looks like a solid piece, but it's you know how sometimes you get those like stray fuzzies that show up? There was none of that. It was very distinct and crisp still in the color lines, because it's like everything kind of felted where it sat. So it's almost like it felted compressed down, not fanning out. Anyway, really pretty. And she said the rug's like 25 years old. So people outside of our community appreciate this for its felted texture and how well it holds up. Who knew? I didn't. I'm learning as we go with a lot of these too. I might know like this is a nice yarn for intarsia, but that's all I could tell you. I am learning so much more doing these videos. So yeah, a lot of times you will see Corriedale in rugs, trivets, coasters, dryer balls, things like that as a felted fiber, because it is so ready to felt. Soft to the skin, but still might be a little itchy for somebody who has super sensitive skin. One of the other things you'll frequently see Corriedale used in is the stuffing in coats and quilts. I actually have a Corriedale bat or batting for a quilt somewhere. I think it's 80% Corriedale, and it's a felted quilt batting. So I've come across that in other parts of my fiber arts journey. But yeah, it's apparently really, really good at being stuffing and doing its own thing, even hidden away from the eye. I do like the idea of something like Corriedale, specifically in like one of those Aran sweaters, Aran fisherman sweaters that are lined on the inside. So Corriedale breathes differently than Merino. And I think in something like that, where you're really wanting to trap heat in, I think something like that would be kind of really, really nice. I mean, you've got that beautiful stitch definition that the Corriedale offers. So you're going to get crisper cables. You're not going to have the fuzzies on your cables there. Just saying. That's kind of like how I would probably use it more often. But it is a beautiful fiber, and it does feel really nice to the skin. It's great for lace. It's great for color work. It's great for things like cable. But you do have that really nice springiness. So if your project is a little bit on the heavier side, as you soak it and reblock it, it's going to pull back into its shape. It's not going to lose its shape completely. It will draw back into itself, and it does full quite a bit and bloom as you soak it, even as a finished yarn. So welcome to the world of Corriedale. Here's a Corriedale sheep, because they're adorable, and I think most sheep are adorable. So on to Cormo. So Cormo is really cool for me. I have played with Cormo a couple of times. One of the yarns I just spun, it's a Finn Cormo blend. So Cormo is the sheep breeds of Merino and Corriedale combined. They were bred in Tasmania in the 1960s. So this is a relative newcomer to the sheep breed world, and definitely into our fiber world. Also, unlike most of the other sheep breeds we will talk about or have talked about, Cormo is not bred for meat as well as fiber. It is solely been bred to have a high fiber yield. So it's very different as far as the intentions for farming. In some places, I saw it cited that they eat 40% less food per pound of fleece compared to other animals, which would be significant in the cost of running a ranch raising Cormo sheep. So, kind of interesting. That's not very common as I've come across with most of these breeds. They have been bred for the production of wool and meat. So a little bit different here. Micron count is 18 to 23. The staple length is 2.5 to 4 inches. One of the cool things about the micron count for this breed is it is very uniform across a single animal. So if you've got a ewe that is producing a 19 micron count wool, most of the fleece that you are going to take from that ewe is going to be a 19. A lot of the other breeds, you don't have that type of uniformity across the entire shorn pelt of fluff. Cormo to me is, especially as an unspun fiber, Cormo to me makes me think of what I want cotton candy to feel like. So it is very much, if you've played with Merino and you've played with Corriedale, what would these two be like if you smush them together? This is exactly what you're getting. So you get the light, airy, silky sheen of the Merino, and then you get this beautiful texture that holds air, holds water, is fluffy and stays fluffy. We got some storms rolling in, and there's unfortunate sounds going on out there. Kind of windy. Did not expect that. Anyway, it's everything you want cotton candy in your brain to feel like. It's so beautiful, but you still have this silkiness to it, this slip to the fiber compared to some of the others. Some of the notes that I wrote down here is you've got the soft sheen from the Merino and the drape of Merino, but you've got that defined crimp, which gives the characteristics of the springiness and the bounciness of the Corriedale. And you've got that elastic spring that the Corriedale has because of that crimp, but it's easier to draft because you have the silkiness to it, but you still have a longer staple length. It is a very durable fiber. It is an economical fiber. As raising the sheep are relatively inexpensive compared to other breeds. This is an economical fiber, and we're going to start seeing more and more, I think, of the Cormo popping up, especially in mass-produced fabrics and garments, I think. But it's so beautiful, and it's so nice to work with, and it's got a very unique feel. It's everything you like from Merino and everything you like from Corriedale, but together into one beautiful fiber. It does not felt as well as Corriedale does. It's got a medium felt. So it's not going to pill as much as Merino, but it's not going to felt as well as Corriedale. So you've got this nice middle of the road zone there as far as what to expect from the longevity and wear. But you still have beautiful stiff stitch definition with this yarn because you don't have quite as much haloing as you do with, say, a Merino. So it's this beautiful combination of these two fibers here to make this one breed. So anyway, I hope you guys found this video informative. There's a ton more information out there. I'm pulling resources from all sorts of different places. I'm trying to find a lot more information from ranchers and breeders than I am, like from the agricultural world, than I am from the fiber world until we talk about the final characteristics of the yarn. But I am finding it very fascinating. You know, BFL primarily has been, BFL truly is only raised in one country. Everywhere else, it is a hybrid of, 10% Merino, 90% BFL. So we don't get as much BFL here, although it has become very popular again here in the States. Cormo is on the rise as it's a very new fiber. It's a very new sheep breed. So they're on the rise for raising. But Merino has just kind of taken over everything. And not just for us as fiber artists, but also in the garments industry. When people talk about wanting to buy a nice sweater, they think of a Merino wool sweater. They're not thinking about some of these other options that are out there. So I think it's really interesting. I'm finding it very fascinating as to why some of these fibers maybe aren't as common, but I'm seeing more people wanting to work with the Corriedale, and I'm seeing Cormo rising up more. The first time I heard of the Cormo was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm seeing that starting to become more popular. And I'm noticing as I'm looking at spinning supplies and rovings and things like that, I'm noticing more people seem to be raising Cormo sheep for fiber, which is what they're bred for. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense. Anyway, I'm just finding it very interesting. And as an American, finding out the history of why some of these sheep breeds exist, how they were developed to meet the need at the time that they were being bred. So anyway, I hope you find it as interesting as I do. I look forward to seeing you guys real soon. Please definitely go check out the rest of the videos in the playlist. We will at least have another 3, if not 4 videos on different wools, animal wool, before we start moving into natural, non-synthetic, and synthetic yarns. So this is definitely going to be something that goes on for an extended period of time. I hope you guys are finding it informative and enjoyable. If you have a suggestion of something you would like to make sure I did some research and talked about, definitely leave it down below in the comments section. I love you guys, and I look forward to seeing you real soon. Bye, guys.